All right, guys, you need to buckle up today. I have got a wild woman on my hands. She's very spontaneous, and I just never know what she's going to do next. So let me introduce Geralyn Gendreau. She tells me to say it like it's Monroe, Gendreau. So she's a licensed psychotherapist. That might sound kind of stuffy to you, but hold on, it's not. She's also playful, soul-provoking life coach, and she loves to tackle the impossible. She is an author, an editor, a ghostwriter, and a writing coach with an 18-year track record in publishing. No, she's also a black belt martial artist. Okay. And she is known throughout California for her dance interpretations of the ecstatic poets Rumi and, oh my God, I don't even know how to say this name. Hafiz?
Hafiz.
I'm supposed to know how to say that. I've seen it in print many times. She ghostwrites for Psychology Today and the Huffington Post. And she works behind the scenes as a copywriter for the trusted hot sex advisor to millions, whose research and insights continually blow her mind. I doubt it, Geralyn. I really am not buying that part. Her own writings have been published in the Elephant Journal, and she has been known to indulge in essay Facebook rants. Oh yeah, that I believe. Get this, her favorite brain hack is jumping out of airplanes. She is the senior editor at Authors Publishing Cooperative. Oh, you were?
That's how I first got into this business.
All right. Well, she used to be the senior editor, and she co-authored and edited 4 elite books, anthologies in the body, mind, spirit category. Her publishing credentials include over 30 books. Wow, I'm just tired reading your bio. I'm ready to jump out of that plane too. She's worked with dozens of well-known authors, including Neil Donald Walsh, Debbie Ford, Bruce Lipton, Jean Bolin, Margot Anand, David Data, Ram Dass, God rest his soul, and Andrew Harvey, who I was just on a show with about 3 months ago. I am not going to ask you for that complete list.
I didn't know you were going to read the whole thing, honestly.
All right. No, I had to. I had to read this because I've never read a bio like this before. This is amazing. So I know that, bios tend to kind of show what we've done, and I know you're working on something right now. So you want to kind of update us and let us know what you're up to now in between jumping out of airplanes?
After all these years writing books for other people, I'm finally the author of a book that's really, for me, the most important book I could possibly write, because it's the life story of the woman who wrote the most important book I've ever read. And that book's called The Continuum Concept. It came out in the 70s. It's the experiences of Jean Liedloff, she was a Manhattan socialite and model for Paris Vogue, and she jumped a train and went off to the jungles of Venezuela with a blonde-haired, blue-eyed Italian count. And after
it's very romantic.
Yes, well, it was actually she found him very boring and arrogant, but she would have gone to the jungle with anybody, she said. She was like, she read this was before the Tarzan TV show. She read that book over and over and over, and she lived in a book called Green Mansions. So the jungle had always been for her, Upper West Side New York heart, the true place, where she felt most at home and in herself in a way that she didn't anywhere else. So she had a very, very rough childhood. And so she was always looking for that rightness that she couldn't find in her family. So after 5 trips to the jungle and living among the Yukon, an indigenous tribe there, for the better part of 2.5 years, over a 10-year period, or maybe a 15-year period.
Wow.
And going back each time to New York and to Europe, and kind of like looking at the people in Central Park and going, they're the savages, those people got it going on. I'm getting back to the jungle, And this was before anybody had even heard the word rainforest. This is the 1950s. If you look at the photos, she's sitting there with them, and the the Yukon men are looking at the microphone and they're fascinated by the tape recorder. And it's one of those ones that's this big and it's got 2 reels.
Oh my God.
So, I mean, those photos really date when she was there. So it was before it was before it all started getting destroyed, and these people had never seen outsiders. So, the startle of that, and I'll read you a story that's what she calls the unlearning. Living with people who had no shame. That was one of the things that attracted me to your show, the shame-free zone. It's
Right.
like I've conditioned to shame. I feel shame all the time, and I'm like, I actually live like there's somebody watching me. I don't know where it comes from, but I feel like I'm always under surveillance. Could be Catholic upbringing, could be, having a helicopter mom. I don't know, but
Catholic background will get you.
yeah, nuns walking around with, I don't think they had rulers in their back pocket, but they might as well have, because their look was, I would rather be slapped on the hand with a ruler than some of those looks. They could give you, freeze you in your spot. What did I do? With a look kind of thing. Anyway, so Jean wrote this book about her observations of life in the village with these people. And she wasn't there doing research. She actually went looking for diamonds, and then was so enchanted with what she saw there and the way that they expressed human nature, the same human nature that we have, that is so troublesome because of the way we're treated. And it's the way we're treated that tells us what we are as a human being. And we're treated with suspicion. They're treated like their innate intelligence is going to take them anywhere they need to go perfectly. They have none of the separation that we live with.
Let's just pause for a second.
Yeah.
Because that is a hard concept to take in.
Sure.
And I really love that you're calling out that we are met with suspicion from birth. Really, we are met with suspicion. Yeah. Don't touch that. Don't do that. Don't ask those questions. Why are you thinking that way? What's wrong with you? Why do you feel that way?
Yeah.
Wow.
We're instilled with a defunct program that has us constantly questioning ourselves.
Totally.
Because we're marinated in a society where, so I don't want to talk about why, but I'm very interested in seeing how I got interested in Jean Lidloff's work. I got out of graduate school. I did, I call it 3.5 years of professional hoop jumping, because you have to jump through so many hoops to get through graduate school. And then to get a marriage and family therapy license, oh my God. This was when you had to take a live oral exam. So there were 6 more hoops than nowadays. And today, people still have to jump through probably 145 hoops. I'm not kidding.
Wow. Yeah.
But I finished school and I was like, okay, so now I know how screwed up people are, and I have names for all of the different screwed upnesses, and I know how they got there, but where are the healthy human beings and how did they get that way? That's what I'm interested in.
Right.
And that was a question that eventually led me to Jean. So I lost my train of thought, but we were talking about the how we get instilled with these. They're like they like break up our experience, because they come down all the time, these considerations of who's looking at me, who's watching me, when am I going to get caught being not the right thing? Do you suffer that, or am I alone here?
I've noticed, especially in this day and age with social media, a lot of people are living their lives for the Instagram moment. It's terrible. Yeah. But or they have like a picture in their mind of what their perfect wedding should look like. It's all about what it looks like, what it appears from the outside to others, to observers. Yeah. Instead of having an authentic internal experience of your existence.
Exactly. Like living from the inside. That's what so many people want, is really to be able to live from the inside out. Yeah. I mean, did you see Social Dilemma? That it's a documentary about?
I did.
That was so disturbing. Like, who knew that the guy that invented the like button was going to get so many people? It was a person or a little cluster of people.
Oh, it's terrible.
The like button.
I have to watch myself, because if I look at, not very many people retweeted.
Oh, I know.
It's nobody liked what I posted on Facebook. Oh, this is terrible.
I stopped posting because I waste so much time going to look. who like dinner. It's ridiculous. It's like a popularity contest on steroids. And
It's terrible. And then you go over
in high school.
it is like high school. It's terrible.
It like re-traumatizes me every time.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Yeah. So let's go back to this indigenous culture, because you're telling me that they do not have shame. That's not an innate component of their culture. Exactly. What do they do instead? Because in Western culture, shame is used to control.
Yes.
Right.
Well, one of the other things about their society is there's no I put it in the it's on the website. The things that they know that we have forgotten. One of them is that sovereignty is our natural, joy is our natural state, and sovereignty is our birthright. So they don't actually try to control one another. They just don't. People just don't impose their will on another person. They wouldn't dream of it. Like, is that paradigm busting or what?
Yeah, very much so.
What would it be like to live in a society where nobody tries to compel anyone to do anything they don't want to do? There's another story, beautiful story in here about that, but I'll read you the one about your question, like what do they do instead? So this was, oh boy, there's just so much in here that's so rich. So this is in a chapter called As the Unlearning Continues. As the unlearning continued, assumptions that had been closed and treated as facts were blasted open. Okay, this is after she's living deep in the jungle with these people who've never seen a white face. They thought she was like this gawky, bizarre looking woman. You know, imagine you're a little brown person and you see this big, ugly white woman with blue eyes, you know, like they didn't know what to make of her. Anyway, I'll go back to the thing. Here we go. So she no longer accepted supposedly obvious truth of beliefs such as progress as good and leisure is preferable to work. She was also confronted was the American notion that men's emotions are a sign of weakness that ought to be hidden, lest the feeling man lose the esteem of his peers. Yeah. A boy in the civilized world will be taught this lesson in myriad of ways long before he approaches manhood. But no such lesson or expectation is foisted upon a Yukon boy. Repressing emotions does not become a cornerstone of his identity as a man. One day, a Yukon boy of 10 years old came to see her. He was screaming loud enough for the entire village to hear. Jean knew the boy, had observed him playing with the other boys for weeks. She thought of him as utterly self-reliant and, like many of his peers, highly disciplined. Through her cloudy, supposedly civilized lens, the boy appeared to be a master of his emotions, because that's what we value, is someone who has mastery over their emotions. That's the civilized view that she's unlearning. Right. He had no behavioral template. She had no behavioral template for what began to unfold before her eyes that day. Here was a 10-year-old boy clinging to his mother, making a terrific fuss in front of the whole tribe. He had an abscessed tooth, but made no heroic effort to remain stoic or conceal his emotional reaction to intense physical pain. Yeah. Nothing in the boy's past experience suggested he would suffer ridicule if other boys saw him in such a shaky state. Nor would he lose anyone's esteem for running to mommy for comfort. Quite the contrary, everyone completely understood. The other boys readily accepted his sudden withdrawal from their fearless ranks. A cluster of children, many of whom were the boy's playmates, hovered around while Jean extracted the tooth. They gave off none of the subtle signals modern boys would use to mock or shame the lad. His mother remained close, not overly concerned, just quietly available while Jean began the procedure. He blanched at the pain. She had no Novocaine, and let out a shrill wail when she finally worked the tooth free. The bleeding hole with gauze. It was over. Exhausted, the boy went straight to his hammock, not even turning to look at his mother. He felt no need to assess the reaction of his peers. An hour later, he approached Jean's hut. The color had returned to his cheeks. He said not a word, just played with some rocks nearby as if to let her know he was okay. Then he wandered off to rejoin the other boys.
Oh. Yeah. So they weren't, it's amazing to think that a group of boys would not be shaming or taunting another boy.
But once you hear that, it's like, well, of course, it almost like breaks the spell of that to,
Totally.
that's why I want this book to be made into a movie. It absolutely needs to be made
Are
into
you
a
are
movie.
you working on a screenplay of the book?
I have had the interest of any number of people have said this needs to be made into a movie as soon as they look at it. And
Yeah.
Jean always imagined it would be made into a film. It should be. It has it written all over it. And
Yeah.
it's part of why, I did wait. Simon and Schuster wanted to publish it at one point, or a publisher at Simon and Schuster wanted to publish it. So
Yeah.
I delayed and waited, and people told me it'll have more street cred if a mainstream publisher picks it up.
Right.
So I waited. I had two agents representing it. Finally, I was like, okay, this book needs to be out there. I don't care. It'll get to Charlize Theron if it's meant to, because
Okay.
she would be the perfect person to play Jean.
So, did this book just come out?
It's coming out in March or April.
Oh,
Where,
wow.
yeah,
Okay.
it's finished. It's going to fingers crossed, Tom Jenks for final edit. He is a phenomenal editor. He edits Pulitzer Prize winning authors, and he
Right.
agreed to look at it. So I'm
Well,
very,
that's congratulations.
yeah.
And is the author still this?
Jean?
Yeah, is she still
Well,
around?
I'm the author of this biography. This is her
Oh,
biography.
okay. So you wrote the biography.
Yeah, no, I didn't have that experience in the jungle. She did.
I get it. I
Yeah,
get it.
yeah.
That much I got, but is she working with you or has she?
No, she died in 2011.
Okay. All
Yeah.
right.
On her deathbed, she wanted to write a memoir. I was helping her work on her memoir, and then she decided she didn't want to be here anymore, and she stopped eating.
Oh,
She
wow.
actually stopped eating, and like
Wow.
the day she decided not to eat anymore, she said, "You be my Boswell," meaning my biographer. And I
Oh,
said,
my God.
"Okay." And for the next 43 days, while she's basically wound down of her own volition,
Right.
let's talk about sovereignty. She
Yeah.
she left this world on her terms. She couldn't use the bathroom anymore, and she said, "Life's not worth living bedpan to bedpan."
Oh my God. How old was she?
80. She wasn't that old. I think she was 86. That's what
86.
I'm going to say.
Okay.
86. Yeah.
Well, I'm glad that she had that kind of empowerment where she could make her own decision. And how amazing. That's very poignant to be there with um, somebody whose life story you're telling as they die.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um,
It's in the book, her
oh,
last, our last words together, and
yeah.
that whole story is in there too. She had a remarkable life. She was an absolutely brilliant genius,
Yeah. Yeah.
but unlettered, which is part of why she was able to see what she was able to see. She wasn't looking through an academic lens. She wasn't studying them. She was just there. She just landed,
Yes.
you know.
Yes. Interesting observation coming from somebody who has letters.
Oh.
How do you feel about your training?
I'm grateful for it. I work with a lot of people in the field, so they don't have to translate their language.
Yeah.
I I have clinical training. It's also people often. I've had any number of authors say, like, you're my best therapist, because when I'm working with them to get them to tell me my stories, those same skills transfer. This.
Sure.
They're transferable skills, and I'm not a ghostwriter who like takes somebody's idea and goes away for 3 months and then comes back and says, here,
Yeah.
some people do that, but, or they'll check in once a month. I'm like in weekly contact, and so I have to pull it out of them sometimes. And very different things come out of people's mouths when they're talking to someone who's interested and asking questions than when they're sitting down to write. I don't know how do people sit down to write a book. I have no idea.
Sometimes I am a published author. Sometimes I'm not sure how that happens either.
Every book I've ever written has been a collaboration. I literally know no other way. I don't know any other way to do it, because from the beginning I was doing anthologies, which were like 32 authors and 4 editors, and
Right.
and a lot of interviews, and it was crazy. But that's where I cut my teeth in publishing, and it's what swayed me from being a therapist, which I don't think I would have been any good at until now anyway.
I know, right? I don't know, but when I used to be, when I was very young, young adult, fresh out of college, and I needed to go see a therapist, I could only afford the ones who had just come out of college too, and boy, that was sure frustrating.
Yeah.
Um, just like they're like, well, in school, what I learned was, it's like,
Well,
no.
I appreciate the people that get out of school and go right into the field. I wasn't one of them. I felt completely unprepared to,
Yeah.
I just knew. And now I know I have tons to offer. But at that point, I was like, blah, 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 I still haven't figured myself out. I don't know how I'm going to help anybody. So
Well,
do it.
as speaking of releasing ourselves from shame,
Yeah.
as you were interviewing, say her name again, Joan?
Jean,
Jean. And what's her last name?
Leadlaw.
Lidla. Well,
Yeah.
as you're interviewing Jean about her time in the jungle with this indigenous tribe who did not have any shame, did you find that your shame was surfacing and getting muted in any way, or did it have an impact on as far as healing your own shame burden?
Well, so my relationship with Jean was paradoxical, let's say,
Okay.
because she has well, we all have a certain blind spot, and there's a whole subplot in this book about the blind spot phenomenon and how it shapes. But as much as she saw what she most wanted
Yeah.
among the indigenous people,
Yeah.
she knew that was the right thing. She knew that that was what a human being shoulda, woulda, coulda. That was the ocean we should be swimming in. The one where we're completely accepted, we're completely held. There's no division. I mean, there's no separation because the infant goes from mother's stomach to onto her body and remains there until he or she is ready until they are ready to crawl off on their own. They're allowed to be totally dependent when they are truly dependent, so they can be naturally independent when the time comes.
Mm.
So I don't have that foundation. I have as wobbly a foundation as most Western people who were looked at like they were born with original sin and were bound to sin in every moment. In fact, born with black sin. You have original sin when you come in. You are a sinner before you even come out of the womb. And
We must beat it out of you.
we can say that and laugh now,
Yeah.
but it shaped my, I mean, I believe in neuroplasticity. I don't like the term. I prefer neurofluidity or something wet, but
Oh yeah, right. Plasticity. Why is it
like,
terrible term?
is not made petrochemical. I'm sorry.
Trying to get plastic out of my life.
It's a bad name for the phenomenon. But yes, the brain can change, but there's some stuff that's so fundamental. And I think that alienation from self is pretty fundamental. And even all the awakening processes and the awakening that is happening among human beings, our generation still has that kind of wobbly foundation. And what we've been able to do even with that wobbly foundation is phenomenal. I mean, wow. We're amazing cohort. And now this next generation has whatever wobble they have. That's why the Continuum Concept and why Jungle Gene, which tells the story of retells the story about where the concept arises, is because that we can have people that don't have that wobble in their foundation if they understand what she has to say.
What is say more about the continuum?
Yes, so the people often get it mixed up with the continuum movement work, which is something that's over here. That's in the body work. This is really what it is her theory. It's a theory. And her theory is that there is what she calls a biological evolutionary continuum of innate expectations that a human infant or any infant we have these innate expectations, like they're programmed by evolution. 7 million years of hominid evolution informed your physiology, and that's why your lungs know that they're designed to breathe in and out air. That's why your skin knows it anticipates a certain climate that it's going to need to sweat sometimes, and it's going to, you know, all of this is the formative years of evolution have prepared us for certain conditions. So
Okay.
basically what she's saying is that the human infant body, I'll tell you what she says, and then I'll tell you how I've extrapolated it to understand it better in terms that, you know,
Okay.
so the infant it is born with innate expectations for how it's going to be treated. So like, you know, held, you know, and sleeping with mommy and daddy, because in 7 million years of evolution, we didn't have a pram. We didn't have lights so you could go sleep in the other room. We didn't have doors. If you slept with the baby in the other room, you could get, you know, tangled up in a coyote, you know, whatever. So there's nothing in our physiology that tells us, okay, you're going to be put down to sleep in the other room and mommy and daddy are going to go over here. And it's like, but you tell modern parents that and they're like, what do you mean have the baby in the bed? They're horrified at the thought.
Oh, I hated being put in another room. Just hated it.
And so what she would say, what Jean would say is, that's your continuum talking. Your body knows that that's wrong. So when children are born with an innate, an intricate set of expectations and an intricate set of signals to let you know when their biological evolutionary expectations are not being met. It's not their preferences. It's not they're a brat. It's that there is nothing in their physiology that can explain being wrapped in a rough blanket and laid over there, you know, like that makes no sense to them.
Right. Oh my gosh. Yes. I do a little bit of dog training. And one of the things that I tell, you know, people who want to know something about dogs, or maybe have me help them with their dogs. I don't do it professionally, but I have helped rehab a few dogs, is that they have an expectation that they're always with the pack. So when you actually walk out the door and leave them alone, that's abandonment in an extreme way. And so you've got to develop rituals around that if that's, you know, obviously something you have to do. And people who put their dogs outside and wonder why they won't quit barking. Their DNA is like, where's my pack?
Exactly. They're in a state of it's distress. They're
Totally.
like, left me behind. Wait.
Exactly.
I can't survive alone. Exactly. That's a very good example.
Yeah. And I have distinct memories of being probably a 1.5, something like that, maybe 2 at the most, and being put in my own bedroom, which I suppose some people might have thought that was a great thing, to give the kid her own bedroom. But I just remember thinking, this is horrible. This is hell.
Yeah. You remember thinking, so when you say I remember thinking, when you were a child, did you, I mean, obviously you didn't have the cognitive capacity, but it was strong enough that you were later able to say I was thinking?
Actually, psychological theory aside, I had a lot of cognitive ability at 2 years old. I was in and out of hospitals from age 1 to 2. And I drew my mother a picture of the waiting room where she held me on her lap and tried to distract me with pictures from a Life magazine. And when I was 8 years old, I drew her a picture and I explained the whole thing and how she walked out the door and I thought she was leaving me. And she told me, you were too young to remember that. But when I drew her the picture, she was just shocked. So I'm one of those people who just has a very early grasp of what was going on around me. And one of the things amazing, this may blow your mind, I don't know, you're the psychologist here, but at that tender age of barely 2, I knew my mother was trying to lie to me by showing me those pictures. And I resented it.
Wow.
I really resented it.
Well, so that speaks to another one of the lessons in here. These people don't lie to each other. It's not, you know, there's no trying to pull one over on somebody. So that's another thing that's like, no wonder we don't trust how other people are going to respond to us. There's a fundamental distrust of everything that we're instilled with in our society. I mean, does this terms here? Go ahead.
Does this indigenous culture not have lying? They don't lie?
They don't have, let me see if I can find this one. I can't tell you that they don't lie. What I can share with you is this one story.
Because I know there are theories that lying actually starts with the primates. They've shown how, chimpanzees will try to pretend that they don't know where a banana is so that the other troop members don't notice.
Right.
So interesting. If this culture doesn't have lying, that would be astounding.
Well, so again, I can't actually make that assertion.
Okay.
I wasn't there, and I certainly didn't live with, but I can share the stories that really stood out for me. So this is, I just want to try to see if I can isolate the one part that's really. So I told you about the canoe capsizing. It was, I think, her fourth expedition. She was on her way and the canoe capsized and she lost all their sugar. She had brought, by then she knew what they liked. So she brought sardines and 501 Levi's because these are the things they were most interested in, And so she traded a bunch of sardines for sugarcane because all her whatever she brought was gone. And they traveled they traveled quite a ways. Yeah. And they, so let me just read you this part if I can find it real quick. Okay. Oh, here it is. Okay. By the time they reached the village 9 days later, Jean's craving for something sweet had become an obsession. She would have traded her entire supply of sardines for sugarcane.
What?
But then thought better of it. Only the Yukon women are allowed to cut sugarcane, but they are not permitted to negotiate a trade. So Jean approached one of the men and struck a deal: 2 pair of Levi's for sugarcane. The next day, she left the village early with the man, his wife, and their son. They hiked over 2 mountains. It was a difficult trek. But the moment she saw the huge sugarcane field drenched gold in the sun, Jean's weariness disappeared. She sat on a log alongside the 2 men. The women walked into the field. She came back a few minutes later carrying 4 large stalks of sugarcane. The man looked at Jean, cocked his head, and nodded. She shook her head and said, "More." He waved his wife back into the field with a quick flip of his hand. She brought out 2 more stalks and laid them down with the others. Her husband opened his hand, palm up, and nodded at his offering. Again, Jean said, "More." The man nodded in agreement. Jean was surprised by the equanimity on his face. Then it suddenly dawned on her. She was feeling greedy, wanted as much as she could get for the Levi's. She shouted after the woman, "Tonoini!" Only one. Thus did she learn the way business was conducted among the Aquana. Bargains were made on the basis of trust. She could have exacted a price of 14 stalks for the jeans, and the man would not have objected. Per Yukon custom, trading goods involved no competition, no pitting oneself against the other. They had no motive to pull one off on each other, only to keep the faith and maintain good relations. Fairness, balance, harmony, justice. This was the Yukon way.
Where is this indigenous tribe located?
They're in the near the Coroni River. Actually, I don't know how much of this territory is still there.
Yeah.
I haven't traveled much outside.
Well, I don't imagine that my viewers know where that river is. I certainly don't. Do we know, is it South America that we're talking about?
Yeah. It's in the eastern end of Venezuela, in the Amazon basin. But how much of that has been destroyed since the 1950s? I mean,
truly
vast portions. So I don't know. It's interesting. I just saw some footage, I think, of the last remaining man who's never been seen civilization. I think I'll put it on my Facebook because it was so fascinating to me. Like, oh my God.
Well, Western culture has pretty much infected the whole planet, except for perhaps China, which is trying to keep us out. But I think we're even over there. So, and one of the risks that I think that we run, having a globalized culture, is indigenous cultures have always had the belief that this is the way it's always been done and this is the only way to do it if they're not exposed to other things. And then we went through a place where a time in human history where we're getting exposed to a lot of different cultures, and we're starting to realize there's a lot of different ways to do things. But now I think because we have become so concentrated, there's almost 8 billion of us on this planet, and now we're starting to really kind of have a one global culture. I think we're going to go back to having this viewpoint that that's the only way to do it. And my concern is that the shame factor is going to be harder to combat, because when people deviate from that, or they have a different thought or a different way of doing things, or seeing things, it's going to be there's going to be a lot of pressure to conform. What have you observed that, or do you have any thoughts about that?
There's always, it seems to me that there's a zeitgeist in every society at every point in its development.
Mm-hmm.
And we're pack animals, like we're like the dogs. You said the dogs we need our tribe. We can't survive without the tribe. So,
Yeah.
So yes, we adapt to what the collective consciousness is to a certain degree. But of course, there's always what doesn't work at one level. I love the integral model, Ken Wilber's work for understanding this, because you get to a certain level of integration, and whatever's not integrated starts to break down. And then that takes you into a crisis that brings in the resources to resolve that. And then at that next level, there's a whole nother crisis. So this is the nature of existence that we're in the midst of right now. It's so very interesting to see the value clash. I find myself thinking, I'm in my 60s, and it's like, wow, I've got some old-fashioned ways of thinking and seeing things. And the younger people coming up, it's like, wow, you really have a completely different take on existence than we do. And it's startling. Do you find that? You're nodding your head. And
well, I know what you're pointing to. I kind of hold this in two different containers. One is I think about innovation and evolution. And I love that. I love the idea of evolving our thoughts and evolving our culture and evolving our existence. I think that's key. So I've got a part of me that's really open to that. I'm kind of, sometimes I'm an early adopter. Um, so I don't get calcified and stuck in my ways for the most part. But there are exceptions to that. There are some areas where I'll think, whoa, I don't necessarily see that as evolution. I feel like there's some way in which it's rebranding of an old human frailty. So, for instance, one of the things that I'm having difficulty with, it's kind of a current trend, is how shame is used to control people. I don't see that as a beneficial way to modify behavior, even abusive or addictive or problematic behavior. I really think we need to help people get connected to themselves and heal those hurt parts so that they don't do those dysfunctional behaviors. But right now, it seems like we kind of got call out culture and cancel culture. And I find that those feel so negative and so toxic to me. And I was just talking to somebody else today. I actually think it's not much different than the stockades and pelting people with rotten tomatoes.
I agree with you completely. Yeah. I have been subject to it for some of the, twice now. Me Too came up. And I defended men, and they jumped on my case. And then with Jungle Jean, similarly, I mean,
yeah, well,
I took a lot of it to heart, but people objected to the cover because it's a white woman with brown people. And
yes, I was talking to a good friend of mine who was saying that there was a time when you embraced indigenous cultures, that was a sign of respect. Now it's considered co-opting.
Yes.
I know.
I know there's an important distinction there, but when you come down on me with something that you haven't actually, I think the thing is, and this is what we were talking about before, it's like, this is the identity thing. This is now well,
how I look at it, Geralyn, is that it's enlighten me, broaden my horizons, get me to look at things through your filter, but don't cancel me.
I love you.
Don't troll me.
Yeah. I do feel like sometimes it's the control dynamic. It's like,
Yeah.
And finally, after I had several back and forth with people about the cover of this book, I was like, yeah, well, I appreciate all your perspective, but that says something very different than you're projecting onto it. And I'm going to let it say what it says, and
Yeah.
let you say what you want to say, because this is the communication that I feel I've been in, like kind of like,
Right.
it's a big deal for me, this book. It's like
Well,
passing the baton on something
well,
that's
it's
so important.
history too, by the way. So, I mean, it's gotten to the point where you can't even talk about a historical fact. Um, it's like, no, this actually happened.
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry that you don't like that it happened. Okay, we can talk about that. Let's definitely talk about it. Let's dissect it. Let's look at it. That's great. Let's do that. But let's not cancel history.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So, yeah, I personally, I'm going to take a very strong stance on this as part of the shame-free zone. Not in favor of cancel culture.
Yeah.
Call out culture. I have kind of a love-hate relationship with that. I think that some people have been called out for some really egregious behavior. I'm glad they have. I think it's important for that we surface this abuse of power.
Yeah.
And at the same time, we need another step. Fine, call it out. Then what do you do? And I think it's so important for us to be starting to look for what comes after Me Too, what comes after this calling out. If all we're doing is transferring shame,
Yeah.
that's really toxic. It's not helping us go forward in any way, shape, or form. And
Well said, woman.
well, and
Yeah.
shame perpetuates the
Well,
very problem.
that was beautifully said.
Thank you.
Keep going.
Thank you. Well, shame perpetuates the problem.
Yes.
I mean, a lot of perpetrations originate from shame.
Yes.
People feel bad. There's becomes this cycle. In my experience of treating domestic violence, people feel bad about what they did. They're very, very remorseful, and as soon as they tip over into that remorse and that shame, they have just like guaranteed they're going to do it again.
Mhm.
So to interrupt that, we have to come to ourselves with self-love. We need to be in community where we're still human. So important.
Yeah.
Still be human no matter what you've done.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I do not, let's say there's some groups who just think love is enough. I absolutely do not. I believe in responsibility and accountability and making an amends and repairing the damage that you've created. Those things are key. I think it's important to have boundaries around bad behavior. So no, this isn't just a, they meant well kind of thing, like the thing your parents tell you where it's just, I'm sorry. Oh, good. Now you can do it to me again.
That was one of the things I wanted to talk to you about in the first place, but
Yes.
we'll have to save that for another one.
Oh, yes, definitely. Well, I know that
I
this.
just want to talk to you. I just love talking to you. You're so
Well, I love talking
articulate and
to you,
beautiful.
Geralyn. Well, I will have you back on again. We
Okay.
just got this started, and we will do
Yes.
this again.
Great.
What kind of final thoughts would you like to leave the viewers with about your brand new book? And then also,
Yes.
how do they get a copy?
Yes, please go to junglegene.com. Just exactly like it sounds, junglegene.com. And put your email address in there, and you'll get the chapter 1, me reading chapter 1. And then you'll also get to know when it's coming out and all of that kind of stuff. So please just go to junglegene.com and sign up. And I'm just so excited to hear people's response once they read it. The response has been amazing. I've got so many fantastic reviews. So it's just really a project of a lifetime for me, and I'm so excited to finally be making it available for people to read on a large scale. So.
Well, now, which book number will this be?
This is only the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 with my name on the cover. And this is the first one with just my name on. Well, there's Jean's name on the cover, but it's by me. So this is my first actual solo act.
Well, congratulations, Geralyn. Congratulations. That is awesome. I know you're going to write a whole bunch more books. Maybe one will actually include something about all that martial arts and jumping out of airplanes. You are a fascinating, powerful woman. So I'm just really excited to have your voice here in the Shame Free Zone. And if you will honor me with your presence again, I'll definitely have you back.
Sounds like fun.
Thank you, darling.
Love you. Bye.
Love.